Hey, welcome to Invitation to World Religious Studies here. We're looking at Chapter 1, the Invitation to the Study of World Religions. I am Doug Beatty, your professor for this class at Lebec Community College. So we're just going to get right to it. You have a few pictures of the different world's religions. Today we're going to look at, in this video, some different aspects, kind of an introduction as a whole. This is a textbook, Invitation to World Religions. It's Oxford University Press book. Some of these videos and the slides is a slide point that I'd use in class, so we'll just go on. Just to highlight again, and some of these things may be reviewed just in the early part of this video. You need to make sure that you're following the assignments, keep looking, and make sure your religious papers on your theme are done each lesson. These thematic religious papers are done by finding an article online, not a dictionary, not an encyclopedia, and not a journal. These would be 2-3 page articles, something that you'll find interesting about the topic that you have picked, and summarize that article, and then you will turn it in. And all of these articles throughout the semester will help you with your theme, because your final paper will be on this theme as well, and you'll have prepared for this paper all the way through. You'll have a sound resource of articles concerning your theme, and you'll have the bibliography for it, and hopefully by the end of the semester you'll understand very clearly how to cite, whether they are online or book or textbook or whatever you may have on your theme. So in Red Zone, again, I just want to make sure you're familiar with everything here. Coursework is where all your assignments are going to be. A discussion board for your posts. And if you need help with MLA8 guidelines, look here. There's a video and written out instructions. There's PowerPoints such as this one. If you want to look at those, I'll have those available as I create them. They're not all created. I'm starting to make the videos. So here they are. Syllabus is there, so be sure to look at that, and so on. There's Red Zone for comparative world religion, and we'll carry on. Here are the different religions of the world. The ones that are part of our study are highlighted in yellow: Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Chinese traditions, which include both Confucianism and Taoism. Buddhism is used and focused on for a full lesson. Then Sikhism is in conjunction with another couple religions. Judaism is all by itself because it has a rich history and foundational understanding for the Western religions, which are Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Without an understanding of Judaism, Islam may not quite take hold for you in understanding, and Christianity doesn't have background. So Judaism is very important. Even though there's only 14 million adherents today, there are over 3 billion, probably half the world has a good understanding and practices religions, Christianity and Islam, that are based on Judaism. Then we have a couple others here: Jainism, Shinto, and not highlighted on this page for some reason is Zoroastrianism. I can't even pronounce it tonight, but that would be the other one with 2.6 million adherents. I don't think there's quite that many today, but we'll get there. And so here's a pie chart about those same religions. Pause on these, take a look at them if you need the time to take a look. We're going to take a look at maps. Maps are very important for us to have an understanding. You can see where the United States is. It's separated from the rest of the world by the wide pond. Even though there were people here earlier, the western part of Europe didn't influence North America until around the 1500s when that began. Then the major religions here that started in in Asia Minor, you'll see are important. Saudi Arabia is a pretty big one. This is where Islam started. Both Christianity and Judaism started in this little strip called Israel today. And then there's Lebanon, there's Jordan, it's a little bit bigger. Iraq is bigger yet. Of course, Syria, we hear a little bit about that because of so many things going on there. But that gives you an idea of size comparison for these different areas and locations where the major religions really did start. So while three major religions started in this map, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, the fourth one really came into being also Iraq, Iran area, Zoroastrianism, about 4,000 years ago. And then the most important mosques for Islam is that of Mecca, the second most Medina, that's where Muhammad died, and then in Jerusalem, which I think they would all say Muhammad never actually ever went to Jerusalem, but he did have a dream that he was there and he thought he was carried by the angel Gabriel. So here is that part of the map. It's a very important part of our study. And then the seven major religions beyond the Western religions that we have just looked at are these Eastern religions that would include these seven: Hinduism, Jainism, Shinto, Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, and Sikhism. So what's your definition of religion as we just jump right into it? Now, what makes a group, what makes a set of people religion? Well, that's a question a lot of people have been asking. Are they seeking or responding to a higher authority of some sort? Or is a religion just a human transformation in response to their perceived ultimacy? Some believe that it is a set of beliefs and where they worship a supreme being. It's really hard to put a definition on. Our book has another take on it. A book that I used to teach out of is called, I don't even remember the name of it, The Sacred Quest. They're at the bottom. So Lawrence Cunningham and John Kelsey say that religion signifies the ways of viewing the world that refer to the notion of sacred reality made manifest in human experience in such a way as to produce long-lasting ways of thinking, feeling, and acting with respect to the problems of ordering and understanding existence. Yes, there is a spelling error on this page. But anyway, I'm not going to start over because of that. They broke it down into 4 different parts about a notion of sacred reality, our experience, ways of thinking, feeling, and acting, and then the idea of existence and how do we situate it. Religion is human activity, some would say, seeking out the sacred reality that teaches them to think eternally, spiritually, maybe differently about our human existence, and pictures of different religious ideas and maybe God figures, if you will. The sacred, superhuman, or spirit, supernatural, these are just different ideas of their sacred reality or their ultimate being, their higher power. Could be the universe, a deity, a god, or multiple gods. Can animals have a religion? Can apes worship? That might be a question. I doubt if we really think of these things too often. Do dogs worship? Well, I tell you what, if you put a dog, guys, this works for guys. I think girls chime in and try to understand this. I think you'll get it. But men, if you put your dog and your girlfriend in the trunk of your car and then drive around for a while, I think in the end, you'll find that someone is really glad to see you. There's someone else going to be steaming hot and mad. That's kind of a joke. But the reality of the question earlier asked, do dogs worship? I mean, the dog would be ecstatic, be licking your face. I don't think that's what's going to happen with the other person in the trunk. I just think it's a funny concept. I would never try this. What are similarities in religion? Well, I think you can come up with some. I want to challenge you to think of some. This is actually on the quiz, so gear yourself up to think about what are some similarities between different religious groups that you're aware of. And yeah, write them down. Keep them in your mind. I'll let you come up with them. You can pause it and think for a moment. There certainly is history, there's practices, there's myths, and I'll explain all of these things as we go through this. Texts, oral traditions, there's certainly beliefs, a community. There are different ideas of sacred than other ones have. Sigmund Freud theorized that the belief in God or gods rise from the long-lasting impressions made on adults by their childhood experiences. Fear and security are the basis. People deal with anxiety of a complicated present and an unknown future. I think it's a creative way of explaining how maybe religions came into being. Anyway, that's Sigmund Freud's take. That was Sigmund Freud's take, but Emil Durkheim. Religion is only the sentiment inspired by the group of its members projected outside of the consciousness that experiences them and the objectified. He was the father of modern social science, and he's very social oriented. Friedrich Schleiermacher, now there's a mouthful for a German name, Schleiermacher. Religion is the feeling of absolute dependence. It's the consciousness that the whole of our spontaneous activity comes from a source outside of us. They call him the father of modern Protestant theology. Well, there may be different ideas. Our textbook here from Oxford University Press uses Bruce Lincoln's idea in the early 20s, I believe, that it is about a discourse, and this is his higher power, if you will, his sacred reality. It's the discourse and the practice of that, and the community surrounding it, and the institutions made by it. So that's where he is going with the definition of religion. It's the ultimate reality. I like the idea of the sacred. Use this in other textbooks. It's a separate, holy, worshipped, adored, honored, sanctified, higher power, revealed at times as a theophany. That means he or she may have revealed himself or herself to a group or individual, and that's the idea of the sacred that they have taken upon to worship and idealize and to aspire maybe to, or to receive information from. Sigmund Freud says, and another one, idea of his, that the religions arose out of the Oedipus complex, that is, out of the relationship to their father. As I mentioned, childhood, bad experiences in childhood. Karl Marx said that religion is man-made, and that it is the opium of the people. Now, there are several comments of different people in the book that might be important for you to recognize and know where they are when you're doing your worksheets. So just as a reminder. Emil Durkheim recognizes the social aspect, and there are societal forces and societal needs that religion helps through unifying these things. Okay, there are some terms in our class that need to be looked at. The first one is just theism. It's the idea of one who believes in a god or a set of gods. Believes maybe in a personal God. You're a theist if you believe in God the Creator. You could be Islamic. You could be a Sikhist. You might be a Native American Indian. Or you might be a Christian. See, this isn't real specific, but it gives you the idea and helps you understand that some people believe, and they are a theist if they believe in a God, a creator. You could be a Brahmin worshiper in India. A monotheist is one who believes that there is just one single creator God. Christians, Jews, Muslims, Sikhs, and Zoroastrianism people, followers, and I'm sure there are many others out there that believe in one God, but they are monotheistic. It's the term mono. Polytheistic is about multiple gods or many gods, such as in Greek or Roman mythology and Hinduism. They all have polytheistic viewpoints of a god. Shinto does as well, and there may be others. So pantheistic means that everything's a god. I mean, we could make the tree a god, or that God is in all things. All things are God. I'm a god, you're a god, that's a god, this is a god. It's all in and it's all good, probably, but at any rate, everything is God. And then there's a henotheistic, or henotheism. Many gods, yet there's one primary one, and some Hindus are this way. And then there's an atheist. So theo is God in Greek, and if you put pan in front, it means all. Pantheo, poly is many, and then you atheist is no, or there's not one, and that's why that comes to, and then mono is one God. And then agnotheistic, or agnostic, is one who's not sure. But there's not enough knowledge, not enough understanding to be able to say scientifically that there is absolutely a God. Now, I think agnostics are scared of faith, where maybe atheists aren't, and either are the rest of them. Agnostics don't want to step where they don't know. But those are some different terms that give us an idea. There's a few more. Richard Dawkins, before we get to the rest of the terms, Richard Dawkins is a prominent atheist of the day. And he says in his God hypothesis that any creative intelligence of sufficient complexity able to design anything comes into existence only as the end product of an extended process of gradual evolution. Creative intelligences being evolved necessarily arrive late in the universe and therefore cannot be responsible for designing it. That's found in his book written probably early 2000s. I don't remember when exactly, but the God delusion. But more terms, monism, it doesn't have a theo in it. There's no theistic idea. It's just that the idea that ultimately one, it's all one. It's not really theistic, but monism, it's not monotheistic. It's just mono. All reality is ultimately one. Animistic is the idea that things have a soul, or things come to life. We have anime, That is what that's referring to. And if you've animated cartoons, that's what that's talking about. You're giving these cartoons like a duck or a mouse or maybe a rock or Veggie Tales. You're giving them animation. You're giving them life to talk and to speak. Mountains talk, and words, they're made into, doing things. All things speak. And some animated movies have this as well. And then the idea of a transcendent God or a transcendent being is one who is beyond our mind, probably because they're thinking of them as ultimately unlimited, infinite. They're separated from humanity in the sense of maybe space and time, so they're otherworldly. But then there's another word that often is used in contrast with it, and I don't think rightfully so, because it's not talking about the characteristics of the God so much, but the activities of the God, which are more within our world. Transcendent God is beyond our world, but yet he may become part of our world by doing things in it. And honestly, I see the imminent part of a god, say in an Indian rain dance. They're wanting the god to be involved with their ideas of and their desires, their chants, their requests, and their pleas for rain. Or it might be from some other ritual act that people might perform just to get the attention of this god. On the other hand, it might be more of a Christian aspect or a Muslim aspect where God would involve himself in their dreams and be this part of our world, but not necessarily contrasted with a transcendent idea, but is this worldly. Or it might be an imminent idea, could be from a polytheistic concept, where God is part of our world and we just need to sacrifice to him and he'll do us some good things. Well, there's the term cosmology. It's a Greek idea for the universe, clarifying the status of the world and how it is ordered. Whether it's ordered by a whole bunch of gods up there with one big one or not, or maybe it's just by one god that's broken down in several parts, or it's maybe just by a monistic being of some kind, or natural causes, or something else. But cosmology speaks to the idea of clarifying the status of our world in which we live. Dualism. It's not a word that's been used in the chapter of this book, but it's an idea that there's an equal and opposite forces that are existing in the universe, like right and wrong, or good and evil, or black and white, or light and darkness. And one isn't necessarily better than the other, but they are equal and opposite. In a dualistic idea from a religious perspective, these are equal and opposite forces working against each other. And there's no real winner, no real loser. It's just that they're equal and they're opposite. And some people have this concept for their reality, for their sacred being. So the question is, how should we live then? These are moral and ethical questions. I believe the difference between ethical and moral is probably a fine line, but I like to use the idea of ethics as the discussion of morals, and morals are the activities of specific behaviors that have ethical ramifications. But the moral behavior specifically, like stealing or lying or murdering, those are usually no-nos in all the religious groups that we look at in this particular study, but they're moral questions and combated or brought to you with ethical discussions about them. It doesn't matter so much for that, but it's what is the right behavior really? How should we live? And where are we getting our information? Is it through a revelation? Is our information coming through a prophet who's speaking to us, whether they're gurus or medicine men or shaman? Or is it God himself or an angel? Or who brings us this information? Or are the information brought to us on a text? Is it given all at once? Given in parts? How does that work? That's a whole nother study probably, but in this picture you have 4 or 5 different texts represented, and we'll look at those as we get to them. They may be oral traditions. That is the ethical, and what are we to do? How should we now then live? Answers maybe just transferred to us orally from one generation to the next. Kind of how it works in our families. But for religious studies, it's generally more specific. We'll take a look at those. What's our ultimate purpose? What do you think of when you hear the question or the idea of worldview? There are different perspectives. Where or who are we? Where did we come from? Where are we going? What's eternity, or is there one? Those are concepts that are often raised, and questions that are often raised to come up with answers. And our different religions have different answers for these things. There's a term used in your book that you need to know, numinous experience. It's a concept brought to you by Rudolf Otto, and the idea is recognizing that there's a sharp contrast or of mystery and fear, or kind of like the literary idea of can't even think of the word now, but of serene. I don't think that is even the word. But it is the serenity idea is fear and wonderful at the same time, beautiful. So in the concept of the numinous experience by Rudolf Otto, kind of the same idea that he has. It's frightening on one hand, but yet it is drawing and attractive on the other hand. What about religion and violence? There's some different approaches to this, and there's certainly different ideas about religion and violence. I think if a religion is promoting violence, it's not very good one to want to be a part of. And so there's certainly some questions about that, and we'll talk about those when they come up. And some different reasons. And hey, if there is a question that you may have about any of these things, please email me and maybe we can put them on our discussion board. What are some different approaches to, or the different dimensions of religions? Well, there are several, and in our book we'll look at some. The mythical discussions are our stories, really, are teachings. The doctrinal is theological. We're not just theology here. We'll break some down, but look at some. We're going to look at the behavior, which is our ethics, rituals and practices of individuals and groups, and so on. There are 3 areas for each chapter that we're going to take a look at. They deal, each of the chapters of these religions talk about their myth, their teachings area, which is their myth, the stories. Myth does not mean it's untrue, by the way. Myth is just telling you that these are some of the stories that are relayed over the period of time to carry messages that are and truths of that religious group. So they're just teachings. They call them myth stories. History is a part of each breakdown of the different religions, and then we're going to look at practices. And history can come in all sorts of ways. There's no way to know it all. Practices kind of the same way, and teachings, between now And since they began, it's impossible to know them all, but we will get a good overlook of the different teachings. The modern world and religion, there's modernization, there's urbanization, there's the globalization and the multiculturalism that has all affected the religions. And we're going to be looking at those and how they interact. And the changing roles of women in religion is important. It's changed. Buddhists, Siddhartha Gautama, when he first became the Buddha, as we would call him, he didn't want women as monks. But he got a lot of pressure. Even for 500 years BC, he was pressured to allow this. And he was okay with it, even though even until recently, it's never been a big thing, but there's more and more. And in fact, the book says that in the last, about 10 years, from 99 to 2009, there's been a 100% increase of women roles in the Christianity. That is from 5% of the population to 10% of the population of the Christian group. So there's some changing roles there. And there's the encounter of religion and science. It's always going to be a battle. One is so much focused on what we can test and retest, and the other one is really based on faith. But both, I can tell you, both have a sense that you have to believe in something you can't test or retest. And that's the challenge, and that will always be the rub of religion and science. And then now there's an academic approach. We're going to look at the book, and we're going to look at other things, and you're going to get some insights from me through this. And it's called an academic approach that the book is going through. I like this word. It's called phenomenological. And this is a word I used very first year I taught this, and it's talking about how to grasp religion from their perspective. Think of it this way. Who do you want to learn Buddhism from? A minister of the Christian church or a Buddhist? I would bet all of you said you would rather learn it from a Buddhist. You'll get it from a guy that has been involved in Buddhism, knows it, speaks the language, understands the culture, knows their religious activities, and that's exactly what I would want. If I'm going to learn Buddhism, I don't want to just read it out of a book. So the best way to find how people practice their religion is talk to the people that practice that religion. If you want to know what a Muslim teaches and thinks, talk to a Muslim. You can probably find on YouTube or on Facebook some people willing to discuss these things. Bring it to the table and share it with us. But that's the phenomenological, because who best understands their religious orientation than those who practice them? But here's the problem with the phenomenological, is not that they're sympathetic and objective, but that they're biased. And for good reason. A Muslim is biased because they believe they're right. And I think that's valuable to understand Islamic history and Islamic practice and their love for Allah. And I think it's important to understand that if you want to know Christianity, don't get it from the newspaper. Go to the church. Go to the people that practice Christianity and who truly love their Lord. Find out what is it that really motivates them. You know, I don't know of anyone that's a Zoroastrian. I've met a few Muslims and I've had them in my class. I've been to their mosque. I've had a few Buddhists. We've had them at our school, had them speak in my class. I had a Jew come to my school several years ago. And I've had people that grew up in a different culture speak in my class so that we get a perspective that's unique. If we're sitting in the middle of Kansas or in the middle of America, we're not going to feel the culture that is really outside our boundaries. But phenomenological information is invaluable. That means it's very, very good to have, because they're sympathetic toward their God, they understand, and they're very objective toward their religious orientation. But sometimes we need to be scholarly, and while we need to listen and be empathetic, we need to challenge them to see if their bias is actually twisting or perverting or blocking information that would be valuable for us to understand their religion. And that could very well be true for any of us on anything. But that's why I like the idea of phenomenological. And to be honest, if you're going to write some information about, say, science in Sikhism, you best be getting it from a Sikh. They would know best, and so on. So I think that's just very important. We're going to do some comparative and multidisciplinary approaches to religion, and that comes from theology, the arts, anthropological studies, archaeology, and so on. All these are very important. How long has the field of religious studies been in an academic discipline like we're studying it now? You realize this is one of the youngest fields in all academics. It's only been around a little over 200 years. America is older than the study of religion. Isn't that crazy? So, we as a group of students here and a teacher, we are drawing upon information that's kind of new. It's certainly new to history. People just had their religion. The word religion has changed over the course of 200 years. When the early Americans used it, it meant Christianity. But today it doesn't. It means religions of all different kinds of mixes. But that's because the study as we're doing it now has not been done but just in the last couple hundred years. So I hope you enjoy the study. We'll carry on. You have been asked to do a summary of this video, and encourage that if you have any questions, please email me. Read the next chapter of this book, Invitation to World Religions. That's what the ITWR stands for, and that's the way I'll be marking it throughout videos and different tags that you might see in our work. So if there's some things that I need to change, please let me know. If you notice some errors, don't hesitate to help me out. Thank you very much.